Hi there, my name's Veity, and tonight I shall be teaching you how to create your own spells in, well, cold spells. The game itself is quite simple. You play as a mage in a sandbox world, and using programming you're actually able to create your own spells, which is a pretty cool concept, to be honest. I myself am a junior programmer, and I usually deal with Unity and C Sharp, so this game was interesting when I first got it, because the game itself allows you to program in JavaScript, which I don't really know that language too well, or it uses a different method which I don't quite know the name, but it's a similar method used in the Unreal editor. It's where instead of writing lines and lines and lines of code, it follows a more, how can I define it, puzzle approach, almost like slotting pieces of predefined code together, and then you just, well, slot in any extra pieces that you want, which is, a pretty good way of programming. It's kind of more visual programming, I'd say. So anyway, onto the tutorial. In this one, I shall be teaching you how to create two spells. They're both levitation spells, one which sends you straight up in the air, which is quite useful for, looking around the map and seeing where you are and what's around you. And the second one is a levitation spell which moves you forwards and upwards at a 45-degree angle. Now, the reason I created this spell in the first place was because using the teleport spell was great. It would teleport you from one place to another. But say you wanted to jump up and over a mountain. Well, the teleport spell itself moves the player when the orb actually hits something. Originally I tried to create a spell whereby the orb would shoot up in the sky and then do an arc, and then wherever it lands it would teleport the player, but that was also a bit too random for actually teleporting the player, because you'd never know where you'd land. So I ended up creating two spells which work kinda well. There's a couple of problems with them, but anyway, let me show you what I'll be doing today. So this is the randomly generated world that I've chosen. Looks quite pretty, really. So to show you what we've got originally, we're given the teleport spell, and all this does is send you from one location to another, which is pretty cool. But say for example I wanted to go all the way up over that mountain. That is a bit difficult with the teleport, so instead I've got these two here, Rising Levitate and Moving Levitate. Now Rising Levitate, quite simply, raises you up in the air from wherever you are. And then to exit you just hit F, and then, if you didn't do anything you'd fall to your death. Moving Levitate fires at a 45-degree angle and slowly pulls the player up. The entire thing behind these scripts is they use the elastic thing, so it's the same thing you'd use on the spell to grab rocks and move them around kind of thing, except from this time the orb is moving and it's elasticated to the player, so the player is being pulled towards the orb at all times. That's basically the code spell's logic behind it, how it works. The actual programming behind it is really straightforward. Before I go into the actual spell itself and tell you how it's written, you'll probably be able to see it yourself if you know what you're doing, but if you don't, I'll generally explain how this works. So the first thing you want to do in game is hit escape, and that will open up this interface for viewing all your spells and things like that. In your library is where you'll find all the spells that you've created, and well, basically any other spell that you have on your computer at this time. So right now I want to ignore all the other spells and go to my spell, so I just hit the Ancients tab and that'll minimize it all. Now these are the two spells that I've created here, Moving Levitate and Rising Levitate. So we'll start with Rising Levitate, and if I go down to edit, this will show you the code. So this is not using the JavaScript. I'll be using this visual method instead, because if you don't know how to program, this will be a lot easier for you. The JavaScript itself is quite good, but it doesn't have the ability, I can't remember the name of it exactly right now, but where you type text and then it gives you various options. It's kind of like autocorrect or autospell kind of thing. You start typing a word and then it gives you options of, is this the word you're typing for, so we'll finish it off kind of thing. So that makes it a bit harder to actually use the scripting side of things. However, coding it using the visual method is really, really easy. So you've got a couple of predefined functions. Now, function I'm going to keep it quite basic, but a function is basically just a block of code. At least it is in this tutorial. So you've got a couple of predefined functions which are, created by the actual game itself. These come standard with it, and these are onCreate, onHit, and onActivate. Now, onCreate itself is when the orb is first created, so when you fire off your spell, any code in this little block will run. OnHit is when the orb hits something, like it hits the ground, or hits another player, or a tree, or something like that, then any code in this segment will run. And onActivate is based on the player actually doing something. So say you've fired off your fireball or whatever, and then you hit the F key. As soon as you hit that F key, anything in this code block will run. So that's pretty cool. It gives you, the option for user interaction, so that you've fired off your spell, and then if you want something different to happen while your spell's running, then you can just hit the F key. So the general basis for this script or spell is as soon as the orb creates, it sets the speed of the orb to medium, and it immediately sets the orb to rotate 90 degrees. So if you imagine you are facing forwards, the orb starts off in front of you and then it suddenly rotates and then shoots upwards. It also immediately creates a connection to the player and sets its elasticity or elastic connection to weak. This means that the orb links with the player and the player is being pulled towards the orb. This one, you can ignore this function. This was for a test, but it's not actually being used right now. I originally had it so that the orb would stop after a certain time, but it's not used at the minute. So onActivate is when we hit the F key, and all that does is it breaks the connection from the orb to the player, and then it destroys the orb itself. And finally, onHit is, say the orb hits a mountainside or something, the spell's gone wrong slightly, or we're in some kind of cave, and then the spell hits the roof of the cave, it again breaks the connection and it destroys the orb. So just in case you've forgotten what that spell does, that's the one which shoots you straight up into the air. So the other spell I created was the moving Levitate, and again on create it sets the speed of the orb to slow. It changes the rotation of the orb to 20 degrees this time, and the rest is exactly the same as the last one. We again don't use this function. Just a little bit of information if you are new to programming that. This is, I said that these three were functions that were already given to you kind of thing. Now when you first bring them in, these are just empty functions. So if I was to bring this in, it's got nothing in it, and then you drag and drop the various things into this one. So if I was go to elastic connection, you drive that and grab it in here. So that's a defined function by the actual game itself. Now one of the things you can do is create your own functions, which is brilliant because that means you can run a segment of code and you can run it multiple times if you need to. So this one here is an actual code that I've written. To do that, you just go to functions and then get this one up here and drag it in, and you can click in here and rename it to we'll call this one function, and then you drag your code. We'll just grab this thing and slot that in there, and then if you actually wanted to run that function, all you do is go to control and call function, just drag it in there, and then where it says function, just type in the name. So in this case it happens to be called function, and that's it. That's really simple. It took me a while to figure this out. That's why I created this video in the first place, because I found it a bit difficult to get into at first, because again, I don't code in JavaScript. I'm not really good with that language. I use C#, and I'm not really good with visual scripting either, if that's what you call this. I'm not too sure. And yeah, so that's basically the end of this tutorial. So good luck, guys. Hope you have fun with the game. I'm really enjoying it myself so far, and yeah, let's see what spells you come up with. I'll probably do a couple more videos every once in a while when I create a new spell and just mess around kind of thing. More of a hobby really, so I can't promise we'll upload another one, but have fun. Good luck, guys.